homeless woman whispered and asked Michael Jordan, "Can you please give me $2? What he did next shocked everyone. These words reverberated through the quiet street, catching the attention of onlookers who could not believe their ears. Michael Jordan, the legendary basketball icon, stood there in disbelief momentarily. The woman's voice was frail, yet her eyes showed a subtle hint of determination. She knew precisely whom she was speaking to, even though her body trembled uncertainly. Rumors started buzzing around the area. Why would Michael Jordan, a global superstar, stop listening to a random stranger asking for $2? And what could he possibly do that would leave everyone speechless? The magnitude of this encounter was beyond anyone's wildest imagination. In an instant, the atmosphere seemed charged with a mysterious aura, as if fate had aligned for this peculiar meeting. But, in the spirit of suspense, let's not reveal everything just yet. There is a story hidden behind this request for $2. One that would transcend kindness, challenge societal notions, and change two lives forever. The question remains, why did Michael Jordan pause his busy schedule to heed this gentle plea? And more importantly, how would his response redefine compassion for all who heard about it? Keep watching, this is just the beginning. Michael Jordan is a name synonymous with basketball greatness. From the moment he stepped onto an NBA court, the world recognized his electrifying talent. His relentless work ethic, show-stopping performances, and fierce competitiveness made him a household name. Yet, behind the flashy dunks and championship trophies, there is another side to Jordan, one steeped in generosity and kindness towards those less fortunate. Over the years, Michael has been involved in numerous charitable and philanthropic initiatives, often working behind the scenes to avoid the spotlight that follows him everywhere he goes. Even early in his career, Jordan demonstrated a quiet compassion for the underprivileged, donating money, equipment, and opportunities to children who struggled to afford quality education and healthcare. He launched scholarship programs, partnered with various nonprofit organizations, and raised funds to improve the lives of the vulnerable. Many of these deeds went unpublicized, as Michael believed that genuine charity does not require applause. At heart, Jordan carried an extraordinary empathy for people living on the margins of society, particularly people experiencing homelessness and those battling financial hardships. He often shared that no matter how much success one achieves, it's crucial to remember our shared humanity. Though famed for his fierce will on and off the court, Michael deeply understood that a single act of kindness could spark a much larger wave of hope. Indeed, that compassion set the stage for this unforeseen encounter. This encounter would take Michael Jordan and an unknown homeless woman on a whirlwind journey of life-altering events, leading to a story no one would soon forget. Sarah had not always been homeless. In her youth, she possessed dreams as big as the sky, a bright spark in her eyes that promised a better tomorrow. Yet, life storms showed no mercy. After losing her parents early on, she was left to fend for herself with little guidance. She tried multiple odd jobs, working in a grocery store, cleaning offices at night, and even tutoring children in her neighborhood, but nothing lasted. Bills piled up like storm clouds gathering for a torrential downpour. Soon, she lost the modest room she rented when her landlord decided to sell the property, and with no immediate family to turn to, Sarah found herself on the streets. Despite her predicament, Sarah maintained a quiet dignity. She rarely asked for help, preferring to do small tasks for neighbors in exchange for spare change or leftover meals. She believed in the innate goodness of people, holding tight to the hope that things would eventually get better. She often said to herself, "I may sleep under the stars tonight, but the sun will shine again tomorrow." That mantra fueled her resilience. Even as her body ached from exhaustion and hunger, she clung to a distant dream of regaining stability. But a series of unfortunate events chipped away at her already precarious situation. An untreated cough turned severe, developing into a debilitating illness. Sarah's condition made it even harder for her to work, and soon impossible to stand on her feet for hours. Hospitals and clinics required documentation and money that she did not have. As her options dwindled, she faced her days with a mix of resignation and resolve. She remained philosophical about her predicament. Misfortune, she reflected, can strike anyone. What matters is how we treat each other when that happens. Little did she know that her chance to meet with Michael Jordan would become the glimmer of hope she desperately needed. She had no clue that such an extraordinary figure would step into her life, nor could she predict the unimaginable twist that awaited her in the coming days. Yet in her heart, Sarah still harbored a flicker of faith, a sense that perhaps, just perhaps, destiny had not given up on her. Picture a bustling city center at dusk. Neon lights flickered overhead, their glow reflected in puddles left by recent rainfall. The sidewalks, dotted with hurried office workers, tourists snapping photographs, and street vendors hawking their wares, seemed alive with possibility and tension. A row of towering skyscrapers stood in stark contrast to a series of rundown buildings on the opposite side of the street. The city's heartbeat pulsed through the concrete, each honk of a taxi and murmur of an overheard conversation weaving into a symphony of urban life. Amid this metropolitan flurry lay the underbelly that few cared to see. A cluster of homeless tents lined the edge of an abandoned lot, lit only by the dim glow of a street lamp. This was Sarah's makeshift shelter. Torn tarps and threadbare blankets shielded inhabitants from the nightly chill. People with somber faces wandered around aimlessly while a stray dog rummaged through trash in search of scraps. Beneath the high-rise shadows, these forgotten souls existed in a world parallel to the wealth and glamour just across the street. That evening, Michael Jordan found himself in this neighborhood under unusual circumstances. He was not dressed in flashy attire or swarmed by fans. Instead, he wore a simple baseball cap, a jacket zipped up to ward off the cold, and a sense of purpose that was almost palpable. Illuminated by a flickering streetlight, Jordan's figure stood out, tall and poised, even as he tried to keep a low profile. People passing by had a double-take moment, unsure if they genuinely recognized the legendary athlete in such an unexpected setting. The air felt charged with a peculiar tension, as though the city was holding its breath. Gravel crunched underfoot, the hum of distant sirens drifted through the wind, and muted footsteps echoed off the graffitied walls. Small, hidden pockets of the street held stories untold, stories of dashed hopes and stolen dreams. But here, two drastically different worlds were about to collide. One represented by a man who once soared like no other on the basketball court, and the other by a woman who barely had the strength to stand. This was the stage of their first meeting. And while neither knew it then, this fleeting instant would soon become an extraordinary chapter in their lives. With all its grandeur and grit, the cityscape formed the backdrop for the moment Michael Jordan and Sarah would come face to face. The neon signs, taxi horns, and swirling crowds paid no special attention to them. Yet, the seeds of a remarkable story were planted somewhere in the quiet corners of destiny. Underneath the glow of blinking street lamps, and surrounded by the city's relentless pulse, a compassion-driven saga was about to unfold. Sarah was leaning against a faded brick wall, clutching a small cardboard sign that read, "Hungry, anything helps." Her voice was nearly drowned out by the city commotion when she murmured, "Excuse me, sir, can you spare some change?" She had no inkling of the man's identity, only that he exuded quiet confidence, unlike any passerby she had encountered. He paused, turning slowly to meet her gaze. Shadows danced across his face, but even in the dim light, a trace of empathy flickered in his eyes. "Here," he said softly, fishing for something in his jacket pocket. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She had expected a dismissive wave or perhaps a small coin, but instead, he stood there, scanning her sign as if absorbing every letter. When he finally spoke again, his tone was gentle yet direct. "What brings you out here?" She hesitated, unsure if it was worth unveiling her troubles to a stranger. Still, his sincere curiosity prompted her to share a bit of her story. How she'd lost her job, fallen ill, and ended up with nowhere to go. As she spoke, he listened intently, occasionally nodding, offering a small word of reassurance or a soft, "I see," in response. There was a pause when she finally admitted, "I just need $2 to get a meal, or maybe something warm to drink. Anything at all." The city's noise seemed to fade for a moment, replaced by the faint pounding of Sarah's heart. Then, Michael Jordan reached out, though his identity was still unknown to her. Instead of handing her $2, he pressed a neatly folded bill into her hand. Sarah nearly gasped. She looked down to find it was not $2, but $100. She stared up at him in disbelief, her eyes brimming with gratitude and confusion. Meanwhile, the legend offered a reassuring smile that spoke volumes. It was as if he was saying, "You are not alone in this." Their interaction lasted only a few minutes, but was enough to set a series of extraordinary events in motion. In that brief exchange, two worlds collided under a dusky city sky, one privileged, one impoverished, yet were joined by a single thread of compassion. Before we continue with the story, we have a small request. We dream of reaching 100 subscribers, and without your support, it won't be possible. So, if you enjoy our videos, please subscribe and give us a like. If you find the story interesting, comment yes below. If not, comment no, so we can improve our content next time. Let's get back to the story. The night did not end with that single act of generosity. As Michael Jordan watched Sarah clutch the $100 bill, he realized something profound. This woman's needs extended far beyond a quick meal. Her fragile form, the pallor of her cheeks, and the quiet desperation in her gaze hinted at deeper troubles. Even though he'd already fulfilled her immediate request, Jordan felt a pull on his conscience to do more. In a low, compassionate tone, he asked, "What's your name?" She hesitated, glancing up uncertainly. "I'm Sarah," she replied, her voice trembling. Something about Michael's presence, his calm sincerity and the kindness in his eyes, disarmed her usual wariness. And so, she confessed that she had been battling a persistent illness and that her body, weakened by malnutrition and stress, could no longer endure the strain of typical day labor. Michael, moved by her honesty, took a moment to consider the depth of her situation. Suddenly, he asked, "Do you have a place to stay tonight?" Sarah answered by shaking her head, explaining she slept under a ragged tarp or at a nearby shelter when space was available. At that moment, an almost imperceptible shift occurred in Michael's expression, one that spoke of decisive resolve. He reached into his pocket once more and pulled out his phone. "Let me help," he offered. "Is there a safe number or address I can get from you? Somewhere we can keep in touch." Sarah blinked, caught off guard by the suggestion. While she didn't have a permanent address, she scribbled down the phone number of a volunteer center she occasionally visited. She couldn't hide her confusion. Why would a stranger care to follow up on her situation? Little did she know, Michael was already formulating a plan. To outsiders, buying a warm meal or handing out spare change might be enough. But leaving Sarah in her dire state felt unthinkable for him. His path to greatness had been paved with the support of others, coaches, mentors, and loved ones who believed in him, and he felt compelled to pass that spirit of support forward. The following day, Sarah received a call from a staff member at the volunteer center. "Sarah," the voice said, "someone came by asking about you. He left a message and wants you to meet him at a cafe downtown if you can." Nervous yet hopeful, Sarah mustered her courage and arrived at the specified location. Michael Jordan was waiting there with a simple cup of coffee. No cameras, entourage, or media circus. He greeted her warmly, motioning for her to sit. Over the next hour, they spoke about her health, her dreams, and the obstacles that kept her trapped in a cycle of despair. Then Michael revealed a piece of news that left her speechless. "I found a small apartment for you," he said quietly, sliding a folded piece of paper across the table. "The rent for the first few months is covered. You need a stable place to recover, and I want to ensure you have that." Sarah stared at him, her lips parted in disbelief. Tears welled up, but Michael gently patted her shoulder. The gift didn't stop there. He had also arranged for a doctor's visit to address her chronic illness, promising to cover the costs of any necessary medication or therapy. It was more than an act of kindness, this was a lifeline. After they parted ways, Sarah had a place to call home and renewed hope. Michael clarified that this was not about charity alone. It was about giving her a platform to regain her strength, find employment, and hopefully help others one day, just as he was helping her now. This wasn't a mere transaction. It was a commitment to bettering another person's life, a promise that extended far beyond a solitary moment on a chilly street corner. Sarah left that cafe uplifted and overwhelmed by an unfamiliar sensation: security. She tucked the apartment information safely into her jacket pocket and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. Meanwhile, Michael stood near the window, watching her vanish into the crowd outside. In his mind, the significance of this interaction could not be overstated. Her life was changing, and in a sense, so was his. Acts of kindness, he believed, had a way of transforming not just the recipient but the giver as well. Word spread rapidly through the neighborhood and the volunteer center about what Michael Jordan had done for Sarah. At first, only a few individuals knew the details, just that the famous basketball icon had stepped in to help a woman in dire straits. But whispers caught fire in the local community, soon reaching newspapers, online forums, and social media. People were astonished to discover that such a high-profile celebrity had taken the time to learn about one homeless woman's story. Many lauded Michael's actions as a beacon of compassion, citing it as a reminder that not all celebrities are detached from the real world. Yet, reactions weren't solely celebratory. A few skeptics questioned whether this was just a publicity stunt. Some critics argued that if Michael Jordan wanted to help, he should be doing it on a wider scale, donating large sums to solve the broader issue of homelessness. Others insisted it was impossible to fix society's deep-seated problems through isolated acts, no matter how generous. Nonetheless, the sentiment remained overwhelmingly positive in the neighborhoods where Sarah once roamed. People came forward offering clothes, groceries, and medical guidance, eager to be part of this uplifting story. When Sarah appeared at the volunteer center after settling into her new apartment, staff gathered around her, celebrating her newfound stability. Tears were shed, hugs were exchanged, and a sense of renewed hope radiated among everyone present. Local media outlets soon highlighted the story on their front pages and primetime broadcasts. Headlines read, "Basketball legend helps homeless woman start anew," and "A simple $2 request leads to life-changing support." It wasn't just about Michael Jordan and Sarah anymore. Their story symbolized kindness triumphing over cynicism, an example of humanity bridging colossal gaps in status and wealth. Ultimately, community members felt proud to witness such a profound display of empathy, hoping this moment would inspire more people to look out for one another. Michael Jordan's act of kindness rippled through every corner of Sarah's community and beyond, spreading an undercurrent of compassion that transcended the initial moment of charity. Though he had discreetly tried to keep the specifics under wraps, the media caught wind of the story, and soon, it was on the lips of strangers across different states. Local news channels interviewed bystanders who had witnessed Michael and Sarah's first meeting, while online platforms buzzed with hashtags calling for renewed dialogue on homelessness and social responsibility. This swelling wave of public interest had unintended consequences. For Sarah, it meant both positive and negative attention. On one hand, kind-hearted individuals offered additional help. Some volunteered to teach her new skills. Others donated groceries or directed her to job opportunities. On the other hand, Sarah suddenly found her struggles spotlighted, leaving her uncomfortable sharing intimate details of her life with curious reporters and well-meaning but invasive strangers. She was grateful for every supportive gesture, yet anxious about the surge in visibility. For Michael Jordan, the narrative was equally complex. Fans praised him on social media, celebrating his humanity and labeling him a role model. Corporate sponsors saw an opportunity and tried to associate their brands with his philanthropic gesture, pitching him proposals to sponsor charitable events. The swirl of publicity tempted some to question his motives. Was it genuinely pure altruism, or was he basking in the limelight? True to his private nature, Michael declined most interviews, politely steering conversations back to the broader issue of homelessness rather than focusing on his role. He asserted that Sarah's story was more important than polishing his public image. This moral aspect of charity, balancing public awareness with the dignity of those being helped, became a topic of heated discussion online. Philosophers, social activists, and commentators debated the ethical dilemma. Is it right to publicize acts of kindness? Or does that, in some ways, reduce the person in need to a spectacle? Others argue that if positive exposure inspires more good deeds and brings attention to widespread social issues, the publicity serves a greater purpose. Amid it all, Michael found himself grappling with deeper personal conflicts. He recalled the countless times he had received help throughout his life, coaches who nurtured his talent, family members who encouraged him, and mentors who guided him. The difference, he realized, was that his struggles were seldom aired out publicly. He could privately process his setbacks without the glare of cameras or the speculation of millions. Sarah, however, had her entire life narrative flung into the public arena overnight. Michael discreetly sought counsel from trusted friends and advisors to address these concerns. He wanted to ensure that Sarah's well-being remained the priority. It wasn't enough to rescue someone for a day. Fundamental transformation required sustained resources, emotional support, and respect for privacy. As a result, he collaborated with a local nonprofit to create a specialized program that would help Sarah and others in similar circumstances, offering transitional housing, job training, and mental health services. The compassion that sparked between two strangers on a lonely city street had become a catalyst for broader societal action. By stepping forward, Michael inadvertently encouraged a larger conversation about what it means to help effectively and responsibly. While some labeled it an extraordinary phenomenon, others saw it as a reminder of what can happen when individuals choose empathy over indifference. Regardless of perspective, no one could deny that a single $2 request had triggered waves of change that reached far beyond one city block. And in this ever-expanding ripple, Michael Jordan and Sarah found themselves at the heart of a story more significant than they had ever imagined possible. As the initial clamor subsided, Michael Jordan and Sarah stood at an unanticipated crossroads where personal reflection became inevitable. The whirlwind of attention from social media, news outlets, and well-intentioned community members had cooled to a gentle breeze. Quietly, life began to settle into a more sustainable rhythm, allowing each to ponder how they had changed and what they truly wanted moving forward. For Sarah, having a stable roof over her head was a revelation. She no longer had to worry about the biting cold at night or the unrelenting search for a safe resting spot. Michael's small apartment was modest but comfortable. A simple bedroom, a functional kitchenette, and a tiny living room with a second-hand couch and a table. She decorated it with small personal touches, postcards from well-wishers, a few potted plants, and a calendar pinned to the wall where she diligently marked her doctor's appointments. Each day, she felt her health gradually improve. A sense of gratitude settled in her heart, mingled with a determination to never return to the streets again. Though Sarah's physical condition progressed, her emotional journey was more layered. At times, she grappled with survivor's guilt, wondering why she had been fortunate enough to receive help when countless others were still struggling. She also wrestled with public misconceptions. People who doubted her sincerity or assumed she was somehow exploiting Michael Jordan's generosity. It took courage for her to continue her medical treatment, to meet with job counselors, and to hold on to the optimism she once thought lost. Through it all, she leaned on the volunteer center and a newly formed circle of supporters. They provided her with moral support, inviting her to workshops on managing finances, nutrition, and job readiness. Simultaneously, Michael Jordan underwent his own introspective process. Having spent most of his life in the spotlight, he was no stranger to public scrutiny. Yet, this event felt different. It tugged at his more profound sense of purpose beyond athletic accolades and material success. He questioned the true impact he wanted to leave on the world. Those fleeting moments in which he'd met Sarah on that dark street had grown into something transformative. Not just for her, but for him. He contemplated how he could continue to leverage his resources, influence, and network to affect real change in people's lives. He remembered the many times he'd been asked to pose for photos or sign autographs for fans. Those moments brought fleeting joy, but rarely did they transform anyone's life. This was different. The sense of fulfillment he felt now was lasting, rooted in genuine human connection and the betterment of another person's future. Michael started envisioning new philanthropic endeavors to bridge the celebrity and community outreach gap. Aware that continuing to assist Sarah directly might stoke public curiosity and speculation, he chose a quieter path. He maintained contact through discreet updates, ensuring she had the required medical support. He also proposed a housing initiative, teaming up with business leaders and local charities to expand the aid provided to homeless individuals, offering them shelter training and counseling to reestablish their footing in society. Michael and Sarah stepped onto new trajectories in these parallel journeys, driven by a sense of shared humanity. Sarah's experiences emboldened her. She vowed to volunteer at the same nonprofit centers that once sustained her if her health allowed. On the other hand, Michael found renewed meaning in wielding his influence, not just for his personal legacy but for the tangible upliftment of those in dire need. Thus, they each embarked on a new beginning, Sarah with the promise of rebuilding her life from the ground up, and Michael with the resolve to channel his fame into far-reaching acts of empathy. Once wholly separate, their stories intersected in an unlikely place, forging a path forward that neither could have anticipated. And, in quiet moments of reflection, they each recognized one immutable truth. Real change begins when ordinary acts of kindness meet extraordinary circumstances. Weeks turned into months, and the story of how a simple $2 request became a life-altering moment for Sarah resonated with countless people. Michael Jordan's unanticipated decision to step into her world and offer more than spare change illustrated genuine empathy's profound impact on another person's life. Once on the edge of despair, Sarah stood on the threshold of a more hopeful tomorrow, her spirit rekindled, her body healing, and her outlook transformed. This journey reminded the characters and the audience of the power of human connection. It's a testament that compassion, when paired with action, can transcend social, financial, or emotional boundaries. Indeed, one gesture of kindness can spark a chain reaction that leads to renewed faith in humanity. As Sarah pursues better health and a meaningful livelihood, and Michael continues to shape his legacy through philanthropic ventures, the ripples of their meeting spread far beyond the city streets where they first crossed paths. Before we wrap up, we'd like to share one final note. Your support means the world to us. We aim for 1,000 subscribers and can't reach that goal without you. If this story touched your heart or sparked your imagination, please subscribe to our channel, give us a like, and let us know your thoughts in the comments by simply typing yes if you enjoyed the story or no if you think we can improve. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. May it inspire you to look for opportunities to extend a helping hand in your own community. As we've seen, you never truly know how one moment of kindness might change a life, or many lives, forever.